sponsors want now what they always have. They want the CRO to deliver what they say they will. But despite many years of experience and loads of money flying around in the system, the intense conversation that goes on and probably will go on at the PCT conference again this year tells us that this doesn't always happen. So what's the big issues for the pharma companies certainly is that they've tried all sorts of ways to make this work. There's been an enormous debate in the past 4 years or so about whether we should move towards long-term strategic partnerships with CROs or tactically outsource to CROs. And for me, I think that's the wrong question, and I think there are other things that are more fundamental that would make more of an impact. I think whichever the type of deal, whether it be a very small project and a standalone one-off, or whether it be in a 5-year sort of global relationship, sponsors and CROs need to make an effort to get to the most realistic propositions. And I think what they need to do more of is learn from their experience. Over the years in our sector, we know that many projects haven't gone according to plan. Uncertain events crop up, there are time overruns, there are cost overruns, and most of these things can be tracked back to actions we took way back then, back to the deal we did, which might have been inappropriate, and we could learn from that. However, it does seem that even in this day and age, multi-million-pound deals are being struck between sponsors and CROs with, to be frank, a little bit of sort of hope and naivety sometimes. Yes, risk-based proposals are very much part of this. We should remind ourselves that sponsors outsource for a variety of reasons, but mostly it's to minimise costs. Now, there's a lot of projects going on in the world, and there is a lot of investment sort of flying around, so competition for this work is very aggressive. The end result of all this is that often a deal will be signed for a minimum price, which will work only if every single thing goes according to plan, which of course it doesn't. So the concept of the risk-based proposal is something slightly different. In this situation, the 3 or 4 shortlisted CROs will be asked by the sponsor to go back and prepare a second proposal. But this one is a full risk assessment, everything that might go wrong, with a fully costed set of contingency plans. Then the sponsor chooses the CRO who's actually made the highest quality risk plan. Now, this is going to be a more expensive deal, but it's much more likely to be a realistic deal, and it's much more likely to actually deliver to time and cost and quality. I should add that we'll be talking about this in the PCT pre-conference workshops, where I and some other colleagues will be debating this issue and hearing the views of the audience as well. Well, if a deal is being done, let's say with a global CRO from a global sponsor, you might expect that you won't see so many of these issues. But of course, each of these organisations will have units within them that are based locally. So for example, in a relationship between a unit in the EU, say, and a unit in the Far East, let's say Japan, there could be quite a lot of hidden differences in the way they do things, which won't be obvious when you kickstart, but actually will cause a lot of trouble down the line. So for example, it would be quite normal in the EU for there to be a reasonably public, vociferous debate and contradictions between the big experts and the various teams in the organisation. Now, if the Japanese see this happening, they're likely to be quite uncomfortable with this. They're used to projecting a much more harmonious approach based much more on the hierarchy. But there's one more thing to add as well, and it's not just the differences between regions that actually cause problems. Different companies work in different ways as well, and especially very large companies doing business with small companies, they may have very different ways of making decisions, of communicating, and things like that. One of the things I do is something called a partnership compatibility assessment that helps this short-circuit this a bit more quickly. Well, let's first say what the worst way is. Just because we are the big player, we are the big sponsor, or we're paying the money, doesn't mean that we can actually make people work in the way that we do, or we can assume that they will. They won't, and things will go wrong. Essentially, the way to resolve this is to communicate and get people to talk to each other, preferably meet, to exchange views on how they work in their organisations, what's different about the way they do things. As I mentioned before, it's best if two teams meet, but if this is a problem with time, a facilitated partnership compatibility assessment can get to these answers quite quickly. And once you understand what are the issues of difference that are actually dangerous if not resolved, then the two teams can get together and make a sort of communication plan to the best way to overcome these when they happen in the future.